Hey everyone, Dan here. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. And keep in mind that these are my own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. These are not meant to be, nor should you take them as, investment or trading advice in any way, shape, or form. Do your own due diligence. Put in the work for yourself and make your decisions based on that. Enjoy. All right, folks, here we are on Saturday, January 13th. We're going to check in on our old friend NVTA. So NVTA doing something kind of interesting here. It was caught in this downtrend resistance for a short while, popped out, got drawn back in, and then had the oomph to get back out and fill the gap that it had left here. And that, to me, I thought was quite an impressive move. I mean, I feel like often when we have these really under long-term and major distressed stocks, that if they leave a downtrend resistance, like on a most recent swing, like the swing down, and they leave it, and then they like immediately get drawn back into it, it's I'm going off of memory here, but I think it's very common that that's just sort of like another nail in the coffin, if you will, and that most stocks would have just done this. So it's interesting to me that it came up really quickly and started wrestling once again with this 60-cent level that we've had on the chart for a very long time, and is continuing to wrestle with it. Now, I'm going to get rid of this downtrend resistance since we walked through sort of my thinking on that, but like I said, it did fill this gap that had left here, couldn't hold that swing over the 60. That said, all of these swings under 60 have also gotten bought up. It is a pretty big percentage range, because this floor here where it keeps getting bought up is about 50. So it's in this like 50 to 60 range. And then if we put in one higher than that, these swings are going, let me see if I want to grab this guy instead. Yeah, I'll say most of that action is right about here. So this, it's sort of going, I know this isn't exactly what I have in the chart, but it's basically going buy up at 50, wrestle around 60, sell at 70. And so, there's just sort of like a combo of buying and selling happening at 60, predominantly selling, right? I feel like it's hitting this resistance a few times more than it's catching it as support. And then for the time being, at least, it's as though sellers really want to unload right around 70 or just above. So but pretty interesting that it continues to sort of magnetize this level, and like I said, it is impressive from the other slew of charts that we look at, that a stock with this sort of history that was caught under that downtrend resistance and pushed out and immediately got drawn back in with a minus 39% day, that it was able to very quickly get back out and stay out for at least this period of time. So who knows if it gets back there in the very near future. But I am wondering, even though it's, like I said, a pretty big percentage range, this 50 to 60 level, I'm wondering where it's going to go, right? It's obviously putting in just a bunch of sideways action. And in these more volatile stocks, sometimes the sideways action takes place over the course of a relatively large percentage gain and loss, like we see here. But it's still, relative to the volatility of the stock, is sideways. So I'm interested to see if it's gearing up to sort of leave one of these levels behind, meaning either 50 becomes new resistance and we get price action in here, or 60 becomes old resistance and we get a bunch of price action in here or even up here. So, the question to me is sort of like, are we going down to the 40s or are we going up to the 60s and 70s? But it could, of course, hang out in this consolidation range for quite a long time, maybe with all of the crazy motion, and even when it sort of stayed in this range here, it was putting in these wild swings and then these huge drawdowns, and then, roller coaster ride again, and now it's sort of flattening out. So it may choose to consolidate for a relatively lengthy period of time. I don't know, but I think it's pretty interesting where it is at the moment. Now, if we look on the think or swim side of things, it's not exactly doing what I would look for it to do here, just meaning like it's doing what it's doing. But, the ideal setup in my mind is always price action pins itself to the mid-range of the channel, sort of like we saw here. But ideally during that time frame, it's triggering with these red dots on the TTM squeeze indicator. And then when it fires, maybe it gets a big move one way or the other. The question is always, first of all, is it going to give a positive indication? Like, is the trigger and fire actually going to result in a big move? And then if it does, which way does that move go? Right? So there's a lot of stuff to sort of analyze and try to pick up on and catch as it's happening in real time. So for the time being, it's just well within the bounds of this channel. This isn't a super wide channel, right? This channel is getting relatively condensed and consolidated itself. We see even back here when it was sort of sideways-ish, it was a much wider channel because it was doing these wild swings. So that's why I say it can move large percentages and still stay within this channel, but this channel is compressed compared to like all of these, super wide channel areas, and it is staying within it. So if there is a big move to come up that's going to be sort of like, I don't want to say so foreseeable, like you can predict it, but that's going to sort of like give some indication of like, hey, something might be coming. What I am looking for in sometime in the future is something that looks like this. The price range, the price action pins itself to the mid-range of the channel, but at that same time starts putting in a lengthy trigger, right? This trigger started to happen basically when the price was leaving, being pinned to the mid-range, and then it did this sort of like wavy gravy. For the time being, though, where it is caught beneath the mid-range of the channel and the lower bound. Hasn't needed to stretch all the way to the lower bound yet, so maybe there's some like relative strength there. Maybe there's some capacity to at least peel back up to the mid-range relatively easily. That said, on the histogram, it does show that the bearish momentum is picking up, at least right now. We got a little, this mini swing here, a little double bottom-ish look here. So we'll see if that continues to play out, or if it does stretch down and press the lower bound of the channel, sort of like we saw back here. And if so, what does it do with that? We saw that maybe back here is a better example. Is it able to climb back toward the mid-range like we saw there, or does it sort of push through like we saw here? It tested in this area and then actually got pushed down through before it was able to pop itself back up. So sort of in an interesting place right now. Like I said, my druthers, if I had like a dream scenario here, we get that price in the mid-range and it starts to trigger, and that happens for several days. But we'll see if that even plays out or not. But regardless, I am interested to see if in the long, like whenever it does eventually decide to move out of this range, does it flip 50 to resistance and put in price action below, or does it flip 60 to sustained support and start pushing, the 60s and 70s and get some motion in that direction? We'll see. All right, folks, I hope that you enjoy your long weekend, and as always, I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video.